Good evening. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the device. I'd like to show you some of the features of this in a very short manner so that you can kind of understand what I have going on here. This is the lower portion of the device, and this is the upper portion. They interface via a T. There's a T feature on the lower and a T slot feature on the upper portion, and they slide together. That's how the device holds itself together. The premise behind the larger portion or the bottom portion of the device is a surrogate lower receiver. This will take the place while in your vise for a lower. Front lug, rear lug. The surrogate bolt carrier ties it all together. So instead of having two small pins you may lose on your desk or drop on the floor, you have one big one. And it goes together in an intuitive manner. Anybody that's carried an M4, M16, AR-15 knows where the bolt carrier goes. So even though it doesn't actually go together like the parent gun, the concept is not going to be foreign to anybody. Starting up front, the area at the leading edge of the lug is actually relieved back ever so subtly so that you can clear rail systems. I have yet to find a rail system that goes behind the rear, the forwardmost portion of the front lug. Moving towards the back, this area here is chamfered out for the ejection port cover to lay more naturally. It'll lay almost to the exact same angle it does when it is on a real lower receiver. That allows you to service the port door and its spring, etc. in a fairly neutral spring manner, so you don't have to wind it more than normal. The other aspect of this area being dished out is if you were to attempt to put an upper receiver on with the ejection port cover open, it lines up and slides out of the way instead of being jammed into the top of the device. Other models on the market are square here. The area toward the rear, this reliefed out cut area is for the forward assist roll pin to go through. Other blocks on the market that, especially because they have the pins that run through the front and the rear, you do not have a relieved out area for the roll pin to go into. So you can build an upper receiver, but it's not very easy to take one apart because you have no place for that roll pin to go. That is what this area is for. This hole, which if I can get it just right, you may be able to see all the way through it, comes out of the bottom of the device. It corresponds with a hole in the upper portion of the device, which directly corresponds with the rear sight tension spring on M16A2s. I'll show you that in just a second. The bottom portion of the device has a dimensionally accurate M4 rail. So a 1913 Picatinny rail and in the same design as an M4. The only subtle difference, once again, is that leading edge, which we relieved off for your rail systems. But it also naturally corresponds with the large lug on the M4, so this area is not generally used. So it has all the normal slots, dimensionally accurate. Place the device in the vise. Doesn't matter really where you put it, whatever suits you. Lock it down. In this case, I'm going to show you an M16A2's upper receiver. Place it in the device. The upper portion goes in. You may have heard or seen the ejection port cover open. In the case of a lot of other types of blocks on the market, if you were to leave the ejection port cover closed and you have pinned it into place, you can't really get in there to open it up. So now you got to unpin it and start over. In the case of the device, because the bolt carrier is designed just like the bolt carrier, any manipulation of it will open the door. Whether it was closed from the initial and you open it up, or if you are testing it for after you've repaired it It works just fine. Notice that it lays at almost the identical angle as it would sitting on a lower receiver. Moving towards the rear, here's the roll pin for your forward assist. Drive it straight down. It has plenty of clearance room. It could fall out into your hand, and most times when I do this, it actually falls in and lays just so you can pull it out with your fingers. It actually doesn't come out of the bottom most of the time. Back to the hole that went all the way through the device. That corresponds with the rear sight tension spring underneath of an M16A2. Although M16A2s are not the most commonplace anymore, there are still millions of them out there. They're also pretty common for match shooters to utilize, and you would commonly take off the standard 1 minute of angle rear sight and replace it with a 1/4 minute of angle, which would necessitate taking this all the way apart. When you drive that roll pin out, that spring comes out. Putting it back in is usually where the trick comes in. This tunnel is designed to allow the emplacement of that spring all the way up into its normal position. Place it in with a tool, which I'm not going to show you in the pictures here. Put your roll pin back in place and you're good to go. That is actually a high damage rate part in there for people that are not used to dealing with it. If you were to carry this all the way out to whatever length barrel you're working on, notice that there is nothing you can't work on. From flash suppressor to the rear, every portion of the upper receiver is able to be worked on without being occluded by the very tool you're attempting to use to work on it. M4s. In this case, or A4s, M4s, any particular model, flat top, upper receiver. Notice that even with an optic in place, the device allows you to function just fine. If you were to take into account that this particular rifle you are either building or rebuilding, there's an issue with it, it very well may be that you have an issue with the optic. So you could either repair the upper on the spot and the optic, or you could take the optic from your operator and send him back out to train with iron sights. Most optic platform guns now are using backup iron sights. That's where the rail comes in handy. I could place a level on this. The operator came in with his optic in slot 2 at the rear. And corresponding to slot 2, he had it in slot 12 at the front. I could actually take his optic, cross-deck it over, and work on it. Let's say he received it from someone else and his reticle was out of alignment. His illumination is not working, or his come-ups don't work. Windage doesn't work, what have you. Time for a new one? That's okay. Take your mount loose, put a new optic in place, set it all back in place. You know now his spacing is correct, and it will cross-deck immediately to his rifle. You could also use this as a rudimentary bore sight at a certain distance. If you have leveled this and have given yourself a target on the wall, you could at least get him on paper so he doesn't spend too much time trying to zero the optic. M4 handles. Once again, these are also fairly out of vogue, but they're out there by the millions. Notice the rear sight tension spring that's down inside of here corresponds still with the hole that's on the top of the, in this case on the bottom of the device. So you would run your tool in the opposite direction. So you could work on the rear sight tension springs of flat top handles. You could work on backup iron sights. You could build tack lights. You could rebuild or service or otherwise any kind of optic, red dot, laser, anything that attaches to the rail. And it does not necessarily have to come off of an AR platform This optic did not come off of an AR, but Picatinny rails are Picatinny rails. As long as the spacing allows, you can place it right on there and work on it. Well, I think that about covers it for now, and that should give you an idea of what the device is all about. Thank you.